I've always admired the works of the old masters. I lost my old sketchbooks when I was a kid. The oldest drawings I found was back in 2010 when I was in high school. I mostly copied and never did any original drawings because I can't draw properly without any references. During this period, I was busy with school and barely drew anything. 10 years later, I decided to draw again.
And that didn't turn out well. I didn't know how to use colored pencils. I copied these two from some fan art I found in Pinterest. I didn't make any progress that year and it demotivated me. So I stopped again.
Skipping to 2021, I bought a drawing tablet. This time I promised myself I'd be more consistent. I wanted a structured learning process, so I started with the basics.
Oh, I remember this. This is the first time I've ever blended and it blew my mind. Because I was having such a hard time trying to find a tutorial on how to blend. And getting used to the tablet took longer than expected. It took me forever to finish a drawing because I keep messing up the lines.
My goal was to do semi-realistic drawings, so I watched YouTube tutorials and drawing courses. I practiced more, but I didn't see any improvements in any of my drawings, and I was getting really frustrated. I just hated anything that I made, especially the gesture drawings. They looked so stiff, and I just wanted to give up. It felt like I was going nowhere, so I stopped again. I was gifted a display tablet. It was the Huion Canvas 13 Gen 3. And drawing on it was so much easier. I got really excited to do more art. I did more studies of the human body, but this time I drew over photos. Then I started seeing more progress. I drew more realistic noses, lips, and eyes. These looked so good for me at that time, and I felt amazed of how fast I progressed. And with this one, I really felt how far I've come with my gesture drawings. I didn't draw over photos. I just copied what I saw, and I was amazed they didn't look stiff, or at least that's how I see it. So I was getting more confident and decided to render for the very first time. And it didn't go as planned. It looked flat as fuck. So I searched for a bunch of tutorials on the planes of the face. And I also found this website. It's the Asaro head model, and you can move the lights around. And you can position it any way you like, and was very helpful. So I did more studies on the planes of the face, and I was very satisfied with the results, which is rare because I'm never happy with my own art. I never like anything I make. I wanted to push myself even further and made another portrait. I didn't draw the hair because rendering it was a whole different challenge for me and I wasn't in the mood for it. This was my first ever properly rendered grayscale portrait, and I was like,
hey, that's pretty good.
And I didn't have any references for this. I just applied what I learned about facial anatomy. I just really love this piece so much. It was my real first art I made that was mine, that I didn't copy from anyone else. It was all my imagination. I never thought I could make something like this. I've spent so much time looking at other people's art, wishing I could paint like them. Then I managed to make something like this, and I was pretty happy with it. Then after this, I did a few more portrait studies. Then I did some anime characters. I didn't finish this one because the details were too much. Okay, so this time I wanted to try a portrait with hair, and I really struggled with it. I didn't know how to make it look like hair, even after watching tutorials. But overall, I liked how I rendered it. I liked the subtle value changes on the cheek. The ear looked flat though. It should have subsurface scattering, but I didn't know how to do that. Anyway, moving on to my next study. I finished this in less than a week, which surprised me. And every time I do these studies, I try to use the whole value range. The rendering on this piece was okay, but it didn't look like my reference, which bummed me out. Now I did a few perspective drawings, which to my surprise, I really enjoyed it. I had fun figuring out how to place things in perspective. The only thing I don't like when drawing buildings or infrastructures are the details. I'm too lazy to draw every window, every tiny details. So most of these drawings are unfinished. It was more important to me that I understand how perspective worked. So now that I've consistently made good art, I wanted to try color. Like, how hard can it be, right? It was hard. It looked flat. I thought this one was gonna be easy because I've been practicing my values. I mean, how hard can it be? Just choose the colors I want to use and then just the value range. And I was wrong. I wasn't aware that dealing with color was a whole other thing. I also tried painting a landscape and like, what the fuck is this? So I redid the eye. I got some feedback from other people. I really dragged down my value slider this time. There were lots of things I didn't know how to do, like the eyelashes and eyebrow. It looked unnatural, like it was plastered on top. I also didn't know how to render the tear duct. It's supposed to look wet and more saturated. I also wanted to put different hues so it would look more lifelike, but I didn't know how to paint it. It looked off every time I did it. I guess my colors were too saturated. But I was happy with the iris. Now to test everything I have learned so far, I made my first ever fully rendered colored portrait. And that took me forever to finish. I think almost 3 weeks. Because I really wanted the face to have different color zones. So I kept pausing and watched tutorials about color. And after watching hours of it, I learned nothing. Well, I learned a few, but I still didn't know how to paint the color zones. And I felt so stupid. Like, why can't I do it? This was driving me crazy. I was going insane. I couldn't paint what I had envisioned. This shit made me almost cry. But I was like, fuck it. I'ma finish this. This is taking way too long. I'll just do better on my next piece. And spoiler alert, I still didn't know how to paint the color zones. But I wanted a different vibe to this piece. I wanted a high contrast painting like the ones Caravaggio made. I just love the dramatic effect on his paintings. And I kinda achieved that look. It's high contrast. The hair looks awful though. I don't know, this still looked flat. It didn't look lifelike. I wasn't sure how to render the clothing as well. I also wanted to put a subtle blue bounce light on the left side of the face, but every time I painted it, it looked off. And I'm just so unhappy with my work. Why does this look better than this? By the way, this is a self-portrait. It doesn't even look like me. Well, kind of. But not 100%. At least I got the silhouette right. Onto the most recent art I made. I called this the City Walls. I wanted it to have a fantasy vibe. I looked through Pinterest for inspiration. For the most part, I had fun making this. I did a lot of trial and error to make the bridge posts to look like they're in the right perspective. I also wanted to change my painting process. I wanted to start with grayscale, then color. I just wanted to make my life easier. But I did have some difficulties trying to figure out how to place the shadows and how to paint the clouds. So I downloaded a free cloud brush pack I found on YouTube. Honestly, my painting process was all over the place because I was experimenting a lot. So yeah, even though I wasn't happy with my previous work and this one as well, I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to keep repeating the same mistakes I made. So I always push myself onto the next project. I wasted too much time and I really regretted that. I kept thinking to myself, how would my art look like now if I was just consistent? So if you feel discouraged with your art, don't stop. Keep going. Don't give up.